the artistic way of making storytelling. Welcome to the mini lesson about the role of the image in the digital storytelling from the viewpoint of the artist and counter-cultural activist. My name is Redas Diržys and I am director for the Municipal Art School, but at the same time acting internationally as counter-cultural activist. I would like to share with you some knowledge about the mechanisms of constructing the story behind the bureaucratic requirements, clichés, and inertia in the presentation of the non-profit organization. We're gonna start from the note that semantically images can play different roles in the storytelling. Inability to detect where the image plays a role of presentation and where its mere representation usually turns the supposedly new created story into mimicking of the already told stories. By using of this kind of templates, the spreading of your authentic message is restricted and even subverted. Instead of delivering a message, the format itself says that you deal with bureaucracy. And that is mostly because of the lack of so-called indexical images, while symbolic and iconographic images are very much overused in contemporary media. Neither text nor picture is not sacrosanct itself per se. Experimenting with overlapping of text with the image is not a taboo, but brings additional meanings. Very important to understand that the use of the image only as a text illustration turns storytelling into propaganda. Usually, non-profit organizations are narrowing itself to a mere representation of their declared mission and vision, which are far different from the real mission they play in the capitalist society. It's worth of efforts always to try to verify how the message that fits NPO's self-vision could be accepted by the lowest social classes. The countercultural examples, and particularly those held by activists fighting for decolonization, are the subject of careful studies and must be applied into everyday activities. Counterculture appears from the lowest or oppressed classes of the society and speaks their language, when official, serious culture is usually the voice of the ruling class. Choosing the side is of crucial importance. Usually building a content for the storytelling is understood as verbalization and illustration of our audience behaviors, experiences, and needs. That is considered to be a proper way of building up the story. But the stories could be built in a non-verbal way. This approach to a topic fosters direct engagement and is less mediated than a verbal one. It's always good to check out what is the key goal for your NPO, smooth conceptualization or direct engagement. There is a long story of non-verbal storytelling. One of the groundbreaking examples could be a so-called letterist cinema, based on materialist approach towards the production of the meaning with the means of film industry. That was a critique of established illusion that the moving image storytelling is based on the bond between narrator and reader, when in fact it is an alienation of the audience and spectators from those who have rights to speak. The contemporary social media strategies are based on total elimination of materialness from the storytelling. So the letterist tactics to physically destroy celluloid film could seem already outdated. Even elimination of narrative or simulating scratches on the movie picture becomes aesthetics to attract more attention, to look differently. So, letterist techniques could be simulated in a decorative way. It's a reactionary approach. But also it could be applied by searching of new techniques able to chisel out or to amplify the images towards inexplicability, towards a new reality. That is why separation of text and image is needed. Tsitsi Damgaramga, an artist and social activist from Zimbabwe, has provided a discerning example of how the mechanisms of structural racism in contemporary discourses could be detected. Her film, I Want a Wedding Dress, made in 2010, was built up on the visual stereotypes of the Western, Eurocentric colonialist culture. African people acting as Europeans fit the stereotype of the civilized people, but to entertain a gaze of Western spectator, is needed exoticism to be employed. Damgaremga in her film left only the features brought to the colonized countries by the European colonists. The colonist spectator sees the film as boring, while the colonized spectator sees it as a critique of colonization. The creation of the image is dealing with the concept of space. The problem appears if we take the concept of space as granted. Usually the amateur or reactionary storytellers employ the superficially perceived concept of space, where physicality, mathematical abstractness, and psychological aspects are intermingled into something that could be shortly translated as emptiness. The paradigm of something could be annexed, colonized, filled up by those who have awareness of it, who have the knowledge, by civilized ones. The non-European civilization deal with the concept of void instead. Europeans are used to equalize both concepts, but the fear of the emptiness, fear to lose the property, and the fear of void, fear of the unknown, are not the same. Anyone who constructs the image must to detect by him or herself what is emptiness and what is void. Creating a completely new image always means disruption of the existing paradigm of space. The concept of spatialization deals not only with the formal aspects of the space, but rather with every aspect of human appearances. Modern European civilization as ideology was built by gradual spatialization of mind. This is mathematical space. Time, this is physical space. And psyche, this is virtual space. Another problem with spatialization appears with a hierarchy in the level of spatialization of consciousness towards a more complicated level, so to get bigger value. The use of complicated structures of volume involving magnitude and producing of mystified text filled with the fashionable concepts, all that are thought to bring an additional value. Simplicity is compared to the emptiness and having nothing to say. The originally new storytelling cannot fit into established frame of space-time class. It must be abolished. Are there some instructions? Probably no. Everyone must foster his or her imagination to work this direction. The only instruction not to be afraid to avoid any instructions. The Senegalese filmmaker Djibril Diop Mambéty, in his interview in 1997, speaks about the virtual space from the depths of the void of the psyche. To fixate it, one needs to employ the means of technology, and that is a secondary step. The point is how to let people to stay to as long as it's possible in the first moment. And if non-profit organizations would be able to use their means of the storytelling to make people dreaming, that would be best fulfillment of the main declared goals of this kind of organizations. The 0 point, the void, not the emptiness, in the beginning of your design project will give you a roadmap and will let you define a planning of social media contents to develop a written and visual storytelling. If you have already lots of materials and must deal with them somehow, inverting, overlapping, tearing, rolling over, and other transformative subversions are not to be avoided. The storyteller is never objective and don't need to pretend that he or she is. Thanks for your attention. I hope you'll find these basic notions useful to make your own storytelling.